The sun had barely begun to pull itself above the horizon, casting anemic fingers of light over the ramparts when the servants of Castle Agincourt began their day. For them, there would be no leisurely start. Their work dictated by the needs of the nobles they served, not by the whims of the rising sun. While the rest of Europe still slept, these unseen workers were stirring. They moved like wraiths through the cavernous, empty halls, their footsteps whispering secrets only the stone walls could hear. Life for these servants was not easy. There was little joy and fewer comforts. Their days were measured in terms of chores completed, and their nights offered little respite. Sleep, when it came, was often fitful, punctuated by the distant rumble of farm animals or the murmur of the night watchman. But even in the dim oil lamp light, as they went about their tasks, they were vital cogs in the machine of the castle, each action, no matter how menial, contributing to the larger purpose of the fortress. For the castle wasn't just a home, it was a microcosm of medieval life, a society within a society, a world unto itself. Here the rhythms of rural life intertwined with the pulse of courtly intrigue. The constant hum of activity never ceased. Cooks were preparing meals, gardeners were tending to the lord's herbs, blacksmiths were sharpening tools. And all the while, the servants scurried to and fro, delivering messages, fetching water, maintaining the fires that kept the great hall warm against the winter chill. A low murmur rose from the kitchens as the servants bustled about their tasks. In this, the belly of the beast, the heart of the castle, food was being prepared for the day ahead. Here, amidst the hiss of bacon on hot stones and the clatter of wooden spoons against earthenware, the castle's hierarchy was momentarily forgotten. In this space, the cook, the scullion, and the page were equals, united in their purpose to fill empty stomachs. In the medieval castle, there was little room for leisure. Every moment, every action was dictated by duty. The servants might have found small pockets of rest, moments of quiet contemplation amidst the chaos. Perhaps a young maid brushing her mistress's hair, lost in the rhythmic swish of the brush, or a stable boy grooming a war horse, finding solace in the animal's rhythmic munching. But such moments were rare, like stars in the daytime sky, beautiful yet distant. While the servants were the backbone of the castle, their lives were largely invisible to the grand narratives of medieval history. Yet without them, the castle would have crumbled. Their existence was a silent testament to the reality of medieval life, a stark contrast to the romanticized image of medieval living often portrayed in popular culture. Their stories, though unwritten, were the very fabric that held the tapestry of medieval life together. Eleanor of Aquitaine, Duchess, Queen, Consort, and Countess. She was a woman whose name echoed through the halls of European history. Born into the royal family of Aquitaine in the year 1122, her lineage was as rich and complex as the wines of her homeland. Her father, William X, Duke of Aquitaine, was a man of power and influence. Her mother, Eleanor of Poitiers, was a woman of fierce intellect and political acumen. From her early years, it was clear that Eleanor was not destined for a life of quiet domesticity. She was to be a player on the grand stage of medieval politics. At the age of 14, she became the wife of King Louis VII of France. This union was not just a coming together of two individuals, but a merging of two powerful dynasties. But the marriage was a disaster. The young bride found herself trapped in a gilded cage of courtly manners and political obligations. The king's controlling nature and the stifling protocols of the French court left Eleanor yearning for freedom. Yet fate had a different path in store for her. The annulment of her first marriage led her to the English royal court, where she met the man who would become her second husband, King Henry II. This marriage proved to be a turbulent one, marked by periods of passionate intensity followed by icy silences. Their relationship was a battle of wills, each seeking to outmaneuver the other. Henry, the consummate medieval monarch, believed in absolute authority. Eleanor, with her headstrong nature, challenged his every move. Despite the stormy seas in her personal life, Eleanor's influence at the English court was undeniable. She played an active role in politics, even acting as regent during her husband's absence. Her interests extended to matters of art and literature, and she was a patron of the arts during a time when creativity was flourishing. But her greatest contribution to history came in the realm of land ownership. Through strategic marriages of her children and the acquisition of territories, Eleanor secured vast holdings, making her one of the wealthiest women of her time. Her later years were marked by rebellion against her son, Richard the Lionheart, culminating in her imprisonment in the infamous Tour de Londres. Even behind bars, her spirit remained unbroken. She died on April 12, 1204, having lived a life that was a potent mix of privilege and peril, love and loss, power and confinement. Her story, a saga of medieval royalty, continues to resonate today, a reminder of the complexities of a woman who dared to dream beyond the confines of her time. Castles, those imposing structures of stone and timber, often symbolized safety and security. Yet behind their towering ramparts lay a grim reality, the castle dungeon. These subterranean chambers were not merely places of confinement, they were chambers of torment, designed to break the spirit as much as contain the body. Contrary to popular belief, medieval dungeons weren't necessarily dark, dank places filled with rats and dripping water. While some dungeons did fit this description, others were surprisingly well designed. Some had windows, allowing natural light to penetrate the gloom. Others featured sophisticated ventilation systems that helped maintain air quality. However, regardless of their design, the common perception of dungeons as dark, dank, and dripping was not entirely off base. Many dungeons served not just as holding cells, but as instruments of torture. The dampness was often intentional, used to make prisoners weak and more susceptible to coercion. As for rats, they were a common feature in medieval life, finding their way into castles through cracks and crevices. The combination of stale air, dampness, and the occasional rodent infestation made medieval dungeons a miserable experience. Popular imagination often associates dungeons with torture devices like racks, iron maidens, and spiked balls. While some castles may have housed such contraptions, they were not standard features of medieval dungeons. Torture was more likely to occur in rooms near the dungeons, places where the screams of the tortured could be heard, serving as a warning and a deterrent to any who might consider challenging the castle's authority. The medieval dungeon was a place where hope came to die, where the sounds of the outside world were replaced by the drip of water and the echo of one's own despair. As the afternoon sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the courtyard, the higher echelons of the castle came alive, lords and ladies, knights and squires, all preparing for the evening's entertainment. A tournament was being planned, and the buzz of excitement was palpable. Tournaments were not merely sporting events, they were spectacles of medieval life, a fusion of athleticism, strategy, and pageantry. The training grounds echoed with the clang of steel on steel as knights practiced their maneuvers. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and anticipation. The upcoming tournament was more than just a display of skill. It was a chance for a knight to prove himself, to win renown and perhaps the favor of the lady his heart desired. Inside the castle walls, life was not just about duty and decorum. There was room for love too. Secret glances across a crowded hall, shy smiles exchanged during a game of chess, stolen moments in the gardens away from prying eyes. Love in a medieval castle was a delicate dance, a blend of romance and strategy. A favorable marriage alliance could mean the difference between prosperity and ruin. And so, while clandestine meetings and secret vows may have been frowned upon by the castle's hierarchy, they were a part of life nonetheless. The castle chapel, with its high vaulted ceiling and stained glass windows, was not just a place of worship. It was a microcosm of medieval society. Here, the rigid hierarchy of the castle came together in a semblance of unity. The king and his knights knelt beside the peasant and the miller's daughter. All were equal in the eyes of God, if not in the eyes of man. Within these four walls, the solemn chants of monks were the only sound that mattered. The weight of centuries of tradition pressed down, enveloping all in its solemnity. As dusk settled and the great hall was lit with torches, the upper echelons of the castle came together for their evening meal. The long wooden table groaned under the weight of roasted meats, fresh loaves of bread and flagons of wine. The air was filled with the murmur of conversation and the clink of silverware. Here, the concerns of the realm were discussed, alliances were forged, and strategies were planned. The future of kingdoms was decided over plates piled high with venison and spiced figs. In the grand tapestry of medieval life, the castle stood as a testament to human ambition, a microcosm of medieval society where duty, intrigue, and life and death played out on a daily basis. Whether you were a servant toiling in the shadows or a lord feasting in the great hall, life in a castle was an experience that shaped individuals and sometimes even history. Welcome to the series, where the past is present. Imagine yourself stepping into a grand medieval castle. What do you see? Perhaps a king and queen enthroned, jousting knights, or ladies in flowing gowns. But have you noticed those bustling about the royal court, making it all possible? The servants. Today, we explore their world. It's me. Join me as we uncover what life was really like for servants working in a medieval castle. Medieval castles were not just homes, they were fortresses, showcasing the wealth and power of their owners. But maintaining such grandeur required an army of servants. Let's meet our servant. We'll call her Ellie, working at the castle during the late medieval period between 1350 and 1500 CE. Imagine you're waking up before sunrise in your tiny room above the castle stables. Ellie's room is dim oil lamplight filtering through a small window, revealing a cramped space shared with several other servants. You and Ellie are so close you can feel each other's breaths in the stale air. No luxurious linens grace your beds, but straw pallets covered in worn blankets will have to suffice. Ellie throws off her blanket, ready to start another long day of work. Outside, the sky is just beginning to lighten, but for a servant, the day starts as soon as the sun peeks over the horizon. Her stomach growls, but there's no time for breakfast. She'll likely receive a bowl of porridge or bread later if she's lucky. After a quick wash at the shared basin, Ellie is dressed in her simple tunic and ready for the day's work. In the late medieval period, castles continued to serve as residences for nobility and as strategic military buildings reflecting the political landscape of Europe at the time. Castles came in various sizes, from large complexes housing hundreds of people to smaller manors with fewer servants. Depending on the size of the castle and its inhabitants, the number of servants could vary greatly. Now we head to the dining hall. You and Ellie sit among lords and ladies dressed in fine clothes. The hall is decorated with tapestries and banners, and a roaring fire crackles in the hearth. Overhead, a chandelier casts flickering shadows on the faces of the nobles and knights assembled here. But your presence is barely acknowledged. The focus is entirely on the noble birth and those deemed worthy to dine with them. For you and Ellie, this is just another day at the castle. The feast laid out on the long table before them is fit for royalty. Roasted meats, fresh loaves of bread, bowls of fruit and vegetables, and flagons of ale and wine. However, while the nobles dig into the lavish meal, your portion consists of whatever scraps are tossed your way. Knights in shining armor fill the hall with boisterous laughter and animated conversation, discussing battles, conquests, and tournaments. Meanwhile, you and Ellie listen quietly to one side, hoping not to be noticed, while you eat, Keeping your eyes downcast, you overhear snippets of their talk. One knight boasts of his valor in battle, another argues about hunting rights with the lord of the manor. Each word is a reminder of your place in the hierarchy of the castle. When the feasting is over and the tables are cleared, you help clear away the remnants of the meal. You and Ellie exchange tired glances, understanding the long day of work that awaits you. With the feasting over, the hall empties as nobles retire to their chambers. Ellie and you are left to clean the tables and sweep the floor. With the great hall cleaned, Ellie heads to the kitchens, the heart of the castle. The kitchen is bustling with activity. Cooks are stirring huge pots filled with stew, their faces flushed from the heat of the fire. The air is thick with the aroma of roasting meat and baking bread. Other servants are chopping vegetables, kneading dough, and washing dishes. Ellie joins the team, her movements efficient and sure. She knows her tasks well. The kitchen is the center of castle life. Every resident, from the lowest servant to the highest lord, depends on the food produced here. The cooks and their assistants prepare meals not only for the castle's inhabitants, but also for any visitors and their armies in case of an attack. They need to plan ahead. Ellie and the other servants gather around a barrel filled with apples, carrots, potatoes, and other vegetables harvested from the castle farm. The farm is a significant part of a medieval castle. Over the years, the castle has acquired vast tracts of land, much of it used for farming. The produce grown here sustains the castle's inhabitants, reducing the need to purchase food and giving the castle some measure of self-sufficiency. Castle farms grew a variety of crops, including grains such as wheat and barley for bread and livestock feed, as well as vegetables, fruits and herbs. Farmland provided the raw materials for the kitchens. The midday sun streams through the kitchen windows as Ellie and the other servants prepare lunch for the castle residents. The meal is simple but nourishing, consisting of bread, cheese and soup. While the servants eat, Ellie catches a few moments to rest. She leans against the cool stone wall, watching the clouds drift by. Despite the hard work, she finds contentment in the routine of the castle life. She may be just a servant, but she is an integral part of this community. Suddenly, the rumble of distant thunder echoes through the valley. Ellie straightens, concern furrowing her brow. A storm is brewing, and she knows that her duties don't stop there. Her hands, roughened by years of work, tighten on the reins as she guides a team of oxen. This scene unfolds in the fields outside the castle, where servants like Ellie tend to the farm animals and crops. The oxen pull a heavy plough, turning the soil in preparation for planting. Nearby, other servants are tending to sheep, pigs, and chickens. These animals not only provide food, but also contribute to the castle's economy through their sale or trade. The servants work diligently, their movements efficient and sure. They are an essential part of the castle community. Meanwhile, you and Ellie make your way through the castle grounds. You pass by a training yard where young men practice swordplay under the watchful eye of a knight. The clang of steel on steel echoes through the courtyard. Passing by the stables, you can hear the rhythmic beat of a blacksmith's hammer as he tends to his forge. The air is filled with the scent of hay and leather, mingled with the sharp tang of metal. Further on, the sound of children's laughter drifts from the orchard. Servants' children are playing a game of tag among the trees laden with ripening fruit. Life at the castle isn't just about hard work. There are moments of joy and camaraderie among the servants. As the day draws to a close, Ellie and you stand together at the top of the castle wall. Below you, the village and surrounding countryside stretch out like a patchwork quilt. The sun is setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The sight never fails to amaze Ellie, even after all these years. The castle is a symbol of power and privilege, but it's also a microcosm of medieval society. Within its walls, there is a strict hierarchy. At the top are the nobility and clergy, followed by knights and skilled workers. At the bottom are the servants, their lives a constant struggle for survival. Life for a medieval castle servant was not easy. Long hours, meager rations and little freedom were the norm. Yet despite the hardships, there was a sense of community among the servants. They relied on each other for support, sharing stories and laughter during rare moments of respite. Though their voices may have been silenced in the grand halls of the castle, their presence was vital to its functioning. And as you look out over the kingdom you call home, you and Ellie know that the survival of the castle depended on all its inhabitants, whether they were born to rule or born to serve. Before we part ways, ask yourself, what would you have done? Would you have endured the hardships of castle life or sought a different path? Share your thoughts below. Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. Together, let's keep learning. The stones are cold here. A few feeble rays of sun slant through narrow slits high above, throwing the dust into tiny dancing motes. If you are in the castle dungeon, your view is limited to these dancing lights, the shadows cast by the beams overhead, and the faces of the guards who stride past, their eyes hard and humorless. Down here, light and laughter are scarce, replaced by the drip, drip, drip of water, endlessly echoing off the rough-hewn walls. This is the realm of prisoners, of men and women whose fate has turned on a cruel twist, or whose lives have been sacrificed for the ambitions of kings. It is a place apart from the great hall, from Eleanor's refined court with its songs and silken tapestries. But make no mistake, these dim, oil-lamp-lit chambers are vital to the heart of the castle. They are where power is truly exercised, where obedience is extracted, and where threats hang in the air like the ever-present dampness. For life in the dungeon is harsh, precarious, and unforgiving. But how does a person end up here? How do they arrive at this lowest level, swallowed by the darkness? Perhaps it happens swiftly, brutally, a punishment meted out for a crime or a perceived slight. Or maybe it is a slow slide, a prisoner bought and sold, sentenced to hard labor or held for ransom. All who enter these dank chambers carry with them a story, hopes, fears, dreams, and regrets. They bring with them, too, skills honed outside these dark walls, be they the cobbler, the baker, or the blacksmith. Trades and talents are not shed at the door to the dungeon. In fact, many prisoners retain their status, their wealth, and their knowledge. While locked within these 4 stone walls, they may be nobles or commoners, but all have much to lose, and all are vulnerable. In such close quarters, cooperation is often necessary. Prisoners help each other shave, wash, and bandage wounds. And since formal trials rarely take place, confessions, accusations, and appeals for mercy are made in hushed tones to whoever will listen, often with no result. There is little privacy here, so friendships are forged in adversity, along with rivalries born of envy and resentment. The cell itself may house just one prisoner or many, from young boys to seasoned elders, all jammed together in the tightest of spaces. Sleep is fitful, broken by shouts from guards, the shuffling of feet, and the clang of metal on stone. Sometimes, if the prison population is large enough, cells are separated by wooden partitions or woven mats. But even this partial division offers little sanctuary. Gossip and news travel easily through gaps in the dividers, ensuring that all are aware of the comings and goings, joys and sorrows of those nearby. In such an atmosphere, stories emerge as a vital commodity, carrying news from the outside world, or perhaps whispered rumors of imminent escape. And for some, there is storytelling as an art form, weaving tales to pass the time, to lift the spirits, or in darker moments, to frighten and intimidate. Stories can inspire, offering hope for the future, or entrap, luring the unwary into false promises. Who can forget the figure of the traveling minstrel who regaled listeners with tales of distant lands and legendary heroes? Yet sometimes, in the wrong hands, These same songs could weave a web of deceit and despair. For within the cold stone walls, life persists, tenacious and resourceful, adapting to the dim oil lamp lighting flickering overhead. Life continues in spite of hunger, gnawing at the belly, and thirst parching the throat. Life goes on, because deep in the recesses of every person imprisoned here, hope flickers like a candle flame, refusing to be extinguished. Each day, prisoners wake before sunrise, if not by its golden fingers creeping over the horizon, then by the insistent calls of the guard, demanding they rise and prepare for their day. The hours that follow are filled with menial tasks, cleaning latrines, carrying buckets of water, or perhaps working in a prison workshop. Here, prisoners may find ways to ply their trades, making shoes, repairing armor, or crafting simple tools. But much of this work is backbreaking and demoralizing, designed not to hone skills, but to instill drudgery. Supervised closely by guards, prisoners work side by side. Their interactions a mixture of necessity and strategy, always mindful of the watchful eyes nearby. Since food is often meager and irregular, prisoners might trade portions of their rations, creating a kind of underground economy based on whatever small luxuries they can offer. Bread, cheese, even a warm cloak becomes a currency in such a setting. As the day progresses, news filters down from the upper levels of the castle, carried on the whispers of guards or by the louder pronouncements of approaching nobles. Sometimes the prisoners hear of battles won or lost, of feasts in the great hall, or of punishments meted out. On occasion, a visitor arrives, bringing word from the outside world or delivering messages between prisoner and family member. Such encounters offer a brief respite from the gloom, but usually come at a price, paid either by the prisoner or by their visitor, depending on the whims of the guard. But as the day lengthens and shadows lengthen, thoughts turn to nightfall and the coming darkness. For as the sun dips below the horizon, fear often rises too. The flickering light of torches reveals damp, crumbling walls, cracked ceilings, and the lurking shapes of rats darting in the corners. The darkness presses in, making the cold stone more palpable, more immediate. And when the oil lamps finally flare to life, casting their weak glow over the prison, they only highlight the emptiness of the space and the absence of hope. In this world turned upside down, the sun's journey from dawn to dusk is a reminder of the passing of time, marking the days and weeks spent in confinement. But the rhythm of nature cannot ease the ache of hunger, nor can it soothe the prisoner's longing for a warm fire or a friendly face. Even sleep offers no solace, coming in fitful bursts between bouts of aching loneliness and the haunting silence. The hours before dawn are perhaps the darkest, not just because the oil lamps have guttered out, but because the human heart is forced to confront the stark reality of captivity. Then, just as despair threatens to engulf, the first faint sounds of dawn break through. The stirring of birds, the rumble of distant wagons, the distant call of a rooster, all filtering down to the lowest levels of the castle. And as these sounds mingle with the promise of a new day, the prisoners wait, holding fast to the fragile thread of hope, dreaming of a world beyond the cold stone walls. In the confines of the medieval castle's dungeon, life went on despite the oppressive gloom. Families might be torn apart, futures uncertain, and health failing. Still, the human spirit persevered, finding strength in storytelling, in the smallest acts of kindness, and in the unwavering rhythm of life. As the sun made its daily journey across the sky, it illuminated not just the grand halls above, but the hidden depths of the castle's soul. It revealed the quiet courage of those held in its darkest corners, enduring and adapting in the face of adversity. Yet it is important to remember that life in the dungeon was not static. As the hours passed, the castle itself seemed to breathe, creaking and shifting, revealing the passage of time and the relentless march of the seasons. Now let us turn our attention to a final, often overlooked aspect of castle life. We have marveled at the kitchens bustling with activity, the great hall resounding with merriment, and the dungeons echoing with tales of hardship. Yet there exists another realm within these mighty walls, one that serves as the unseen backbone of the castle, connecting its disparate parts and ensuring its very survival. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its golden rays across the castle grounds, a familiar sound drifted up from the bowels of the castle. The rhythmic clang of hammer on iron, the scraping of a shovel, and the murmur of voices engaged in earnest discussion. All these sounds converged upon a space too often ignored, the castle workshops, tucked away in forgotten corners, yet vital to the castle's existence. Here, amidst the grime and the steady rhythm of industry, a different facet of castle life unfolded. Blacksmiths, farriers, armourers and carpenters toiled, giving form and function to the raw materials of the castle's upkeep. Imagine a vast space, dimly lit by the flickering light of a forge, the air thick with the scent of coal smoke and hot steel. Here, amidst the sparks flying high and the deafening ring of hammers, the castle's lifeline was forged. A team of burly blacksmiths worked tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames of the forge, imbuing iron and steel with the strength and shape required for everything from a knight's helmet to the sturdy hinges on a gate. Next to the forge, in a space perpetually dusted with sawdust and shavings, a carpenter meticulously shaped wood, coaxing bows and staves into tools, furniture and carts essential to the castle's functioning. In another corner, farriers shod horses, their skilled hands moving with practiced ease, ensuring that each nail was driven straight and true, keeping the royal steeds ready for battle or transport. It may seem paradoxical, but in the midst of the clamour and chaos of castle life, these workshops offered a strange sense of order. Each blow of the hammer, each measured cut of the saw spoke of precision and skill, a dedication to craft that transcended the clash of arms and the clatter of dishes. In these workshops, the raw materials of the kingdom were shaped and moulded, and each finished product bore witness to the toiling hands that had brought it into existence. The hum of activity here was constant, punctuated only by the occasional shout from a foreman or the jingle of coins exchanged for a day's work. The products of these workshops were as diverse as the needs of the castle, from sturdy chairs for the great hall to arrowheads for the archers, each item telling a silent story of its purpose. Yet, amidst the industry, there were quiet moments too, when a craftsman stood back to survey his work, a broad grin splitting his face as he admired a job well done. In these shared smiles, there was a camaraderie born of hard work and a common purpose. For these men, working in the castle's shadow was more than just a job. It was a way of life, a contribution to the very fabric of the kingdom. So the next time you stand in the shadow of a mighty castle, marvel not just at the soaring towers and the grandeur of its halls, but also at the unseen heart that beat within its walls, the workshops where the rhythm of industry never ceased. These places were not just crucibles of creation, they were also repositories of skill, resilience, and the quiet pride of a job well done. In the tapestry of castle life, each thread is vital. From the artistry of Eleanor of Aquitaine to the hardships faced in the dungeon and the tireless work of the craftspeople in their workshops. Every corner of the castle tells a story, reminding us that medieval life in all its complexity played out within these ancient stones. This is the great hall, heart of the castle, where high ceilings soar and rafters are carved with heraldic beasts and scenes of valor. It is midday, and the long table, laden with food fit for a king, stands ready for the coming feast. The aroma of roasting meat mingles with the fragrance of spiced wine, drawing hungry courtiers and squires toward the hearth. A page, quick and eager, rushes to lay a place for the late arriving knight. As he runs, we see not only his youthful face, but the reflection of the hall's bustle in his wide eyes. Lords and ladies, knights and pages hurry and chatter, preparing for the noon meal. The hall echoes with their energy. Such scenes come to mind when we think of medieval castles, grand spaces full of activity. They also conjure images of lords brandishing goblets, damsels in distress, and brave knights jousting in the courtyard. These iconic scenes may not have been quite so boisterous or so tidy. The reality of medieval castle life was messy, chaotic, and complicated, a far cry from the picturesque ideal. Castles were often called upon to play multiple roles, serving as residences for nobles, administrative centers, and fortresses when needed. This required flexibility from all who lived within their walls. To understand what a medieval castle was really like, we need to consider the range of people who lived there, from nobility to laborers, and the daily demands placed on each of them. First, let's look at the lord or lady of the castle. Life as a noble wasn't always easy. As the head of a household, they had considerable wealth and power, but also significant responsibilities. They oversaw the administration of their lands, managed agricultural estates, and received and entertained guests. The castle was their home and workplace, combining living quarters, storage space, and a hub for managing their domain. They had to attend to repairs, staffing issues, and security concerns. As a result, the nobles' days were often filled with paperwork, diplomacy, and planning. On top of this, they had to maintain a public image of wealth and power. They needed to host feasts, sponsor tournaments, and show their support for religious institutions. All of this required manpower. Serving the noble family were a range of servants, including cooks, clerks, grooms, and armorers. They provided essential services that allowed the higher ranks to pursue their duties and leisure activities. Knights and squires formed the elite warrior class of medieval society. Their primary duty was to defend the kingdom or their lord's honor. They trained rigorously, managing both military drills and personal fitness. Castles were important to them, as they provided a base of operations. Here they would prepare for campaigns, store their equipment, and most importantly, gain experience in siegecraft and warfare. Castles themselves were often the target of attacks, requiring knights to be ever vigilant and ready to defend. Then we have the men-at-arms, foot soldiers who formed the backbone of the medieval army. They were responsible for defending the castle in the absence of knights, carrying out raids, and in times of war, joining the battles alongside knights and nobles. Their work was dangerous, demanding both physical prowess and strategic thinking. Living conditions for these warriors varied greatly depending on their rank. Knights might have lived in relative comfort, enjoying better housing and food than common soldiers. Men-at-arms were likely housed more communally, sharing rooms and preparing their own meals. All of them, however, would have known the harsh realities of life as a medieval soldier, dealing with poor nutrition, exposure, and the constant threat of battle. Now let's turn to the women of the castle. Women's roles varied considerably based on their social class. Noble women might have had more comfortable lives, managing households, organizing events, and participating in political affairs. Commoner women, on the other hand, were typically involved in agricultural work, domestic service, or trade. Regardless of their status, women's labor was essential to the running of a medieval castle. Their work, often unseen and undervalued, was vital to the survival of everyone within the castle walls. The final group we should consider are the laborers. Their work was fundamental to the castle's survival, but they were often overlooked in historical narratives. Builders and masons were responsible for constructing and maintaining the castle's imposing structure. Farmers and laborers grew crops and raised livestock, ensuring that the castle was self-sufficient. Servants and tradespeople like blacksmiths and carpenters provided essential services for the inhabitants. Without their work, the castle would quickly fall into disrepair. Laborers' lives were challenging, marked by long hours and hard physical work. They faced the elements, the risk of injury, and often poor working conditions. Yet their efforts were the bedrock of the castle's functionality, silently ensuring that the more privileged members could live and work within its protective walls. But what about their living conditions? How did the residents of a medieval castle spend their time away from their duties? Castles were primarily functional structures designed for defense and administration. While the living quarters might have been comfortable for nobles, they were not necessarily lavish. Knights and squires might have shared rooms, and common soldiers would have lived in more basic accommodations. Rooms would have been sparsely furnished, with beds, chests for storage, and perhaps a small table and chairs. Cleanliness was a challenge, and waste disposal was a constant concern. The lack of indoor plumbing meant that sanitation was difficult, and waste often ended up in the castle's courtyards, or if the castle had one, its moat. Entertainment options were limited, and residents might have found amusement in games, music, or storytelling during their downtime. Access to books was rare, and most people would have been illiterate. Religion played a significant role in people's lives, and most castles had a chapel where residents could pray. Religious imagery and artifacts would have been present throughout the castle, reminding everyone of the importance placed on piety. The daily life of a medieval castle was not just about the tasks and routines, it was also about the social dynamics and hierarchies that shaped interactions among the various classes that lived within the castle walls. Power was concentrated among the nobles and knights, while the majority of the population performed essential but often thankless jobs. Their contributions, however, made the functioning of the castle possible. Understanding the daily life in a medieval castle gives us a glimpse into a world where hierarchy, duty, and survival were intertwined. It was a place where the grand ideals of knighthood and courtly love coexisted with the grittier realities of medieval existence. Castles were not just fortresses or symbols of power. They were dynamic environments where a multitude of lives intersected, each contributing to the larger story of medieval history. As the feast begins, the Lord raises a silver goblet, its surface emblazoned with the family crest. He proposes a toast to valiant knights, loyal vassals, and fair ladies. Around him, the assembly murmurs its agreement. A troubadour strikes a chord on his harp, and the company sings along. The lyrics tell of deeds of daring, of valor shown against fierce dragons and dark sorcerers. It is an epic tale, but what do these songs reveal about medieval culture? Troubadours were traveling musicians and poets who composed and performed songs in vernacular languages. Instead of Latin, which was the dominant language of scholarship, they chose the tongue of the people, often adding local color and dialect to their lyrics. Love was a popular theme, and not just courtly love, but the rough wooing of common folk. Minstrels sang about everything from the joys of romance to the woes of unrequited passion. These songs offer a window into the emotions and values of the medieval era, a time when chivalric ideals and earthy realism coexisted. Across the hall, a knight adjusts his armor, the polished metal glinting in the firelight. Is it merely a fashion accessory or a symbol of his status? Actually, both. Armor was a display of wealth and power, often bearing the insignia of the wearer's lord or kingdom. Beneath the gleaming breastplate beat a human heart, however. A knight's armor was also a necessity. It protected him in battle, safeguarding his life in the face of danger. At a corner table, a scribe meticulously copies a manuscript by candlelight. His quill scratches across the parchment, creating letters that will preserve knowledge across generations. Scribes played a crucial role in medieval culture. They were the keepers of literacy, transcribing ancient texts and creating illuminated manuscripts that often became treasured artifacts. Beyond the Great Hall, the castle bustles with activity. A cook stirs a pot over an open fire, the tantalizing aroma of stew filling the air. Nearby, a baker kneads dough, preparing bread for the evening meal. Simple sustenance was the order of the day, but these humble foods were essential for sustaining the people who lived and worked within the castle walls. In the courtyard, a squire polishes a sword, the metal flashing in the sunlight. Squires were the apprentices of knighthood, learning the skills and values of their mentors. They assisted knights with armor, weapons, and horses, preparing them for the duties of the warrior class. And high above the castle bustle, in a tower room, a lookout scans the horizon. His sharp eyes search for any sign of approaching enemies or friends. From this vantage point, he is the first line of defense, watching, waiting, ready to sound the alarm. High atop the castle wall, a flag flutters in the breeze, a silent messenger communicating the castle's current state. Green signified peace, yellow warned of potential danger, and red indicated imminent attack. Within these four strong walls, a microcosm of medieval life unfolded, the rhythms of duty, entertainment, and survival intertwined. Each activity, no matter how grand or mundane, contributed to the story of the castle, a testament to the complexity of life in the medieval era. We leave behind the underground chill of the dungeons and step once more into the great halls of the castle. Here, the air is warmer, filled with the sounds of music and laughter. Flickering torches cast light on high-beamed ceilings, where banners hang proudly, displaying coats of arms and family symbols. This is the world of the elite, lords, ladies, and honored guests. Their lives, though also bound by the same stone walls, were defined by ceremony and display rather than endless toil. At the center of this world was the banquet. Imagine long wooden tables covered in white linen cloths, crowded with pewter plates, goblets of wine, and trenchers of bread. Servants hurry to and fro carrying steaming platters. Roasted meats, pork, venison, swan, or even peacock, are laid down with great flourish. Spices, precious and rare, brought from distant lands, lend the food unfamiliar flavors. Cinnamon, saffron, and pepper were not just ingredients, but symbols of wealth and global connection. The noise of such a feast was steady, but not overwhelming. The clatter of knives, the murmuring of conversation, the strumming of a lute in the background. Between courses, entertainers might recite poetry, juggle, or play music. For the nobility, dining was not simply about nourishment, but about reinforcing hierarchy. The lord and lady sat at the high table, elevated above others, their position a constant reminder of rank. Beyond the feasting halls, another pastime of the elite awaited, the hunt. Hunting was both recreation and training for war. Lords and knights would ride out into forests and fields, hounds bounding ahead, horns echoing through the trees. To hunt a stag was to display skill, bravery, and mastery over the land, yet it was also ritualized, bound by traditions that gave meaning beyond the mere chase. For those who participated, the crisp air, the rhythm of hooves on the earth, and the cry of dogs in pursuit created a tapestry of sound and motion that defined noble leisure. Then there was the code of chivalry, a system of ideals that shaped the identity of knights. It was not always lived up to in practice, but it was endlessly spoken of in courts and chronicles. Imagine young squires, polishing their master's armor, dreaming of the day when they would be knighted. The ceremony of knighthood itself was carefully staged. The vigil spent in prayer, the blessing of arms, the symbolic strike, a gentle tap yet heavy with meaning that transformed a man into a knight. At court, knights were expected to embody courtesy as well as strength, to show loyalty to their lord, to protect the weak, and to honor ladies. Songs of troubadours celebrated these ideals, weaving tales of honor and romance that drifted through the candlelit chambers of castles. Whether these ideals matched the messy realities of politics and war mattered less than the way they provided a framework for noble identity. Compared to the endless toil of servants and the grim uncertainty of prisoners, the world of the elite seems rich and glittering. Yet even here, the cold drafts of stone could not be entirely banished, nor the dangers of rivalry and rebellion set aside. Privilege and burden existed side by side. As the banquet ended and the torches burned low, the castle would fall into a hushed stillness once again. Above, nobles in their chambers rested on feather mattresses beneath heavy blankets. Below, servants curled on straw pallets, and in hidden corners, prisoners endured the long night. The rhythm of life in a medieval castle moved forward, one day after another, each layer of society bound together by the same stone walls. Welcome to my channel. Today we are exploring a medieval castle, but not as a tourist. We are becoming part of the story, experiencing the castle as a living, breathing place. Let's start our tour in the late afternoon as the sun begins its slow dip below the horizon. We are standing before a massive oak door, intricately carved with images of battle and the heraldic beasts of noble families. Behind this door lies the entrance to the castle, a gateway between the outside world and the shelter of the towering stone walls. But before we can cross the threshold, a guard approaches, his armor gleaming in the fading light. He asks us for our purpose in entering and, upon learning that we are visitors, motions for us to wait. Moments later, a horn echoes through the courtyard, signaling the lowering of the portcullis, the first line of defense in the event of an attack. The heavy wooden shutters of the outer bailey are closed and bolted. Now the drawbridge, still swaying slightly from its recent use, is pulled up and secured, leaving us on the outer bailey, surrounded by high stone walls. The only way forward is through the main gate, which is now opened by the guard who greeted us. Our journey through the castle begins. We enter the first bailey, a large open space within the castle walls. In front of us is a mix of domestic buildings, stables, workshops, and storehouses. Beside us stands the constable's hall, where guards rest and eat. The smell of wood smoke drifts from the kitchens, and the murmur of activity fills the air. A group of soldiers marches purposefully toward the armory, their steps echoing on the stone. In the distance, a blacksmith hammers away at a horseshoe. The rhythmic clang is a familiar sound here. We pass by busy merchants unloading bales of cloth from their carts and head towards the well, its bucket creaking up and down. From here, we can see the towering structure of the keep, the central stronghold of the castle, and the residential quarters of the lord and his family. Further on, we hear the sounds of farriers working on a horse's shoe. Nearby, the thud of a hammer on an anvil rings out. In the center of the bailey, we spot a group of men playing a game of chess on a large board drawn in the dirt. The players concentrate intently on the pieces scattered before them. The men pause their game, glancing up to acknowledge us, and then return to their silent battle of wits. As we walk on, we catch sight of women spinning wool into thread. They hum softly to themselves, their wheels spinning in harmony with the rhythm of their voices. The scene is one of quiet industry, a testament to the many hands that make the castle function. Now it's time to move on. And as we continue our exploration, we realize that the hustle and bustle of the first bailey was only a prelude to the grander spectacle that awaits us. The castle, with its soaring towers and echoing halls, is not just a fortress, but a microcosm of medieval life. It's a place where power and privilege meet, where strategy and diplomacy intertwine, and where the weight of history is felt in every stone and turret. And our journey through it promises to be nothing short of captivating. So ends our journey through the majestic and brutal world of the medieval castle. Within these aged stones, we've navigated the winding paths of power, faced the chill realities of medieval life, and witnessed the clash of ambition, duty, and survival. From the highest towers to the deepest dungeons, we've experienced the full spectrum of existence, during a time when life and death often intertwined within these very walls. Yet as our tour draws to a close, I invite you to linger a while longer in the echoing halls of history. Let us reflect on the tales we've uncovered and the lessons they hold for us today. The medieval castle wasn't just a fortress or a royal residence. It was a microcosm of human existence where the grand and the grim intertwined. Your journey began in the heart of the bustling medieval market. Here amidst the vibrant chaos, we discovered that life for medieval townspeople wasn't just about toiling in fields or trading in markets. It was also about community, camaraderie, and celebrating life's joys. We learned how festivals like Easter or St. John's Day brought people together in feasting and merriment, creating bonds of unity and joy. We also glimpsed the darker side of this communal life, witnessing the plight of beggars and the harsh realities of poverty. These sobering reminders served as stark contrasts to the merriment, underscoring the full spectrum of human experiences that unfolded within the castle's shadow. From the market, we ventured into the Great Hall, a place where royalty dined and where the rigid rules of etiquette were a reflection of the times. In this opulent space, we discovered how food wasn't just sustenance, it was a symbol of power and hierarchy. The placement of different foods on the table, the types of dishes used, and even the order in which meals were served all had their place in the social structure. This intricate dance of hierarchy extended to the seating arrangements too. We saw how the king's throne, placed at the high table, symbolized his supreme authority, and how lesser nobles and commoners occupied different sections of the hall based on their status. We also witnessed the spectacle of a medieval feast, complete with multiple courses of delectable dishes, each served with its own set of customs and meanings. But the Great Hall was not just about opulence and hierarchy. It was also a stage for entertainment and a witness to important events. We saw how minstrels played their instruments, sang songs and told stories, filling the hall with lively music and engaging narratives. We also observed how important pronouncements and negotiations took place within this setting, transforming the Great Hall from a dining space into a court of law and a theatre of diplomacy. Our journey took us to the chapel, a place of solace and piety amidst the turbulence of medieval life. Here we delved into the world of Christian worship during the Middle Ages. We learned how the elaborate rituals and the grandeur of the space were designed to inspire awe and devotion. The intricate stained glass windows that adorned the chapel walls served as powerful tools for teaching biblical stories to a largely illiterate population. We also saw how the lives of monks and nuns were deeply intertwined with the castle, providing spiritual guidance and essential services within its walls. Theirs was a life of prayer, work, and discipline, dedicated to serving God and the community. We also explored the castle dungeon, a place where the medieval world's darker realities came to the fore. Within these dank, dimly lit chambers, we encountered the grim realities of medieval justice and the harsh lives of prisoners. We saw how these dungeons were not just places of confinement, but often became chambers of torture and despair. The use of shackles, the stench of waste, and the ever-present threat of execution created an atmosphere of constant fear and suffering. Yet even in this bleakness, we found stories of resilience and resistance. Finally, our tour culminated in the royal bedroom, a space that revealed the human side of medieval royalty. Amidst the tapestries and the richly decorated bed, we saw how even those in power had moments of privacy, comfort, and vulnerability. The bedroom wasn't just a place of rest, it was a setting for important political discussions and a silent observer of royal family dynamics. As you stand before the imposing facade of the medieval castle, take a moment to absorb the essence of this remarkable structure. It is not merely a relic of the past, but a testament to the complexities of human history. Within these ancient walls, Stories of kings and commoners, of love and loss, of triumph and despair have unfolded for centuries. Imagine the weight of the stones that make up this structure. Each rock monolith carries within it the echoes of countless footsteps, whispered secrets, and the laughter of generations past. Feel the texture of the rough-hewn stone beneath your fingers, and let your mind travel back in time to when these stones were newly quarried and laid. Picture the skilled hands of masons shaping these very stones to form the foundation of a kingdom. Let the creaking of the drawbridge transport you to a time when it was a lifeline to the outside world, a silent sentinel guarding the passage to safety. As you walk along the battlements, feel the wind whipping through the crenellations, whispering tales of knights in shining armor, defending the realm against invading forces. Listen to the wind's mournful song as it flows through the empty arrow slits, each one a silent witness to the skill of archers who once stood here ready to defend or attack. Contemplate the purpose of the portcullis, a formidable barrier designed to withstand the fury of siege engines and the relentless assault of determined attackers. And as you stand before the imposing gatehouse, picture the medieval townspeople finding refuge within its protective embrace during times of peril. And now, dear traveler, as our journey through time draws to a close, I invite you to step back into the present. Slowly open your eyes and turn your gaze to the real world that surrounds you. Allow the vibrant colors of the sky, the rustling of leaves in the trees, and the gentle touch of the breeze on your skin to ground you in the here and now. Take a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill your lungs, and feel the solid ground beneath your feet. Stretch out your arms and legs, awakening your muscles from their momentary slumber. Remember the stories, the sights, and the sounds that echoed within the medieval castle walls. Carry a piece of its magic in your heart as you re-enter the tapestry of your everyday life. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey through time. If you've enjoyed this experience, I invite you to share it with others and let the spirit of history captivate them as well, until we meet again in another adventure.